The Deep Space Patrol Fleet Iron Wolves had been cruising through the Kepler 442 system for 3 weeks when the signal arrived. Commander Jake Harrison was finishing his morning coffee in the command center of the UHS Liberty when the communications board lit up like a Christmas tree. "Sir, we're getting something strange," called out Ryan Carter from his position at the communication station. The young officer's face showed confusion as he adjusted his headset. "It's not any human frequency I recognize." Jake set down his cup and walked over to Carter's station. Around the bridge, other crew members began to take notice. The Liberty was the flagship of their small patrol group, leading 5 other vessels on what was supposed to be a routine deep space mission. They were far from Earth, farther than most humans had ever traveled, mapping new star systems and looking for resources. "What kind of signal?" Jake asked, leaning over Carter's shoulder to look at the display screens. "It's encrypted, sir. But the pattern is definitely artificial. This isn't some natural space phenomenon." Carter's fingers moved quickly over his controls, trying to clean up the signal. "It's weak, like it traveled a very long distance." Dr. Lisa Morgan, the ship's xenolinguist, hurried over from her science station. She was a small woman with bright eyes who had spent years studying the possibility of alien languages. Until now, it had all been theory. "Can you isolate it? Play it through the main speakers?" Jake nodded to Carter, who pressed several buttons. The bridge filled with a strange sound, like music mixed with static. It rose and fell in patterns that seemed almost familiar but completely alien at the same time. "That's definitely a language," Lisa said, her voice filled with excitement. "Or at least an attempt at communication. The mathematical patterns are too complex to be random." Jake called his senior staff to the bridge. Within minutes, Lieutenant Danny Brooks from Tactical, Chief Petty Officer Tony Walsh from Engineering, and Lieutenant Amanda Foster from Intelligence had all gathered around the communication station. "How long will it take to decode?" Jake asked Lisa. "Give me a few hours with the computer," she replied, already pulling up translation programs on her tablet. "I'll need to find the basic mathematical concepts first, then work from there." 4 hours later, Lisa called everyone back to the bridge. Her face was pale but determined. "I've got something. It's not perfect, but I can understand the basic message." She pressed a button and the alien sounds filled the bridge again. This time, words appeared on the main screen as the computer translated. "Help us, please help us. We are the Zelani people of the world Zelana Prime. The Korthak Empire attacks our home. They kill our people. They destroy our cities. We cannot fight them. We have heard stories of the great warriors called humans, the Deathworlders. We do not know if you are real. We do not know if you will hear this message. But if you do, please help us. We are dying." The bridge fell silent. Jake felt his stomach tighten as he read the words again. Around him, his crew exchanged worried glances. "There's more," Lisa continued. "They give their location. Zelana Prime is about 6 light-years from here. The message also includes technical data about their attackers." Lieutenant Foster stepped forward. "Sir, we need to talk about this. We're a patrol fleet, not a rescue mission. We don't have authority to engage in first contact, let alone first contact warfare. The message is 3 days old," Carter added quietly. "By the time we get there, it might be too late anyway." Jake looked around at his crew. These were good people, trained soldiers and scientists who had volunteered for deep space service. They knew the risks of being so far from Earth. But this was something none of them had prepared for. "What do we know about the Korthak Empire?" he asked Foster. "Nothing in our databases, sir, but from the technical data in the message, they seem to have a large fleet. The Zelani describe them as a warrior race that conquers other planets." "Tony," Walsh spoke up from his position near the engineering station. "Sir, if we're talking about a rescue mission, I need to tell you our ships aren't designed for major combat operations. We've got weapons, but we're explorers first." "The Zelani don't think we're explorers," Danny Brooks said, reading through the message again. "They think we're some kind of legendary warriors. Look at this part about Deathworlders." Lisa had been working on more of the translation. "They have more information about us than we might expect. According to this, stories about humans have spread through their part of the galaxy. They describe us as beings who come from a world so dangerous that we became the greatest fighters in space. That's Earth they're talking about, Carter said with a nervous laugh. Our home planet. Jake thought about Earth. Hurricanes that could destroy entire cities. Earthquakes that could split the ground open. Volcanoes that could block out the sun. Animals that could kill a human in seconds. Diseases that could wipe out millions. Maybe to aliens from a peaceful world, Earth really would seem like a death world. Sir, Foster said carefully, even if we wanted to help, we're talking about 6 ships against what sounds like an entire empire. That's not tactics, that's suicide. Jake walked to the main viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out, their people were dying while calling for help. People who had heard stories about humans and believed those stories enough to send a desperate message into space. I want everyone to think about something, he said, still looking out at space. We came out here to explore, to learn, to represent humanity among the stars. Well, this is our first test. What kind of humans are we going to be? He turned back to face his crew. I'm not ordering anyone to do anything. This has to be a choice we all make together. But I want to hear from each of you. Tony Walsh was the first to speak. My grandfather always told me that when someone calls for help, you answer. Doesn't matter if you know them or not. I became a communications officer to make contact with other species, Carter added. This isn't how I imagined it would happen. But here we are. Lisa was nodding. These people reached out to us specifically. They could have sent their message in all directions, but they aimed it toward human space. They believe in us. Danny Brooks looked at the tactical data on his screen. It's going to be dangerous, maybe impossible. But if we don't try, we'll never know if we could have made a difference. Amanda Foster was quiet for a long moment. As intelligence officer, I have to say this is the most dangerous mission any human crew has ever attempted. We'll be going into unknown space to fight an unknown enemy to save people we've never met. She paused. But I also know that if we ignore this and these people die, we'll have to live with that for the rest of our lives. Jake looked around at his crew one more time. Anyone want to vote against this? No one spoke. Then we go to Zalana Prime, Jake decided. Carter, send a message to the other ships in our group. Tell them what we've found and what we're planning. Any ship that wants to return to Earth has my permission to leave. Yes, sir. Foster, I want everything we can learn about this Korthak Empire and everything we can figure out about the Zalani. Brooks, start working on tactical scenarios. Walsh, make sure all our ships are ready for combat operations. What about me? Lisa asked. Keep working on that translation program. Something tells me we're going to need to do a lot of talking. When we get there. As the crew scattered to their tasks, Jake remained at the viewport. In 6 hours, they would jump to faster-than-light speed toward a world they had never seen, to help people they had never met, to fight an enemy they knew nothing about. But the message had called them Deathworlders, and maybe it was time to find out what that really meant. The jump to the Zalana system took 18 hours. When the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, Commander Jake Harrison felt his heart sink at what they saw on the main screen. Space around the beautiful blue-green planet was filled with wreckage. Pieces of what had once been space stations drifted in slow, sad circles around Zalana Prime. Some were still burning, orange flames flickering in the darkness. Other chunks of metal and crystal spun end over end, leaving trails of frozen air and water behind them. My God, whispered Ryan Carter from his communications station. What did they do to this place? Dr. Lisa Morgan stood beside Jake, her face pale as she watched the destruction. Through the viewport, they could see the planet itself. Dark smoke covered large parts of what should have been green continents. Even from space, they could see the glow of fires burning on the surface. Sir, I'm picking up life signs, called Lieutenant Amanda Foster from her intelligence station. There are ships out there, small ones, drifting without power. Survivors, Jake said immediately. Carter, try to contact them. Brooks, what's our tactical situation? Lieutenant Danny Brooks was hunched over his tactical display, his face grim. Sir, we've got big problems. I count over 200 enemy vessels in orbit around the planet. Most of them are huge, bigger than anything we've ever built. They're positioned to cover the entire planet. Jake studied the tactical display. The enemy ships were arranged in a perfect sphere around Zalana Prime. Some were as large as cities, bristling with weapons that were currently pointed down at the planet's surface. Smaller ships moved between them like deadly insects. Any sign? "They've noticed us?" Jake asked. "Not yet, sir. We're still pretty far out and there's a lot of debris between us and them. But once we start moving closer..." "Carter, any luck with those survivors?" The communications officer adjusted his headset and nodded. "I'm getting something, sir. It's weak, but I think it's the same language as the distress call." "Dr. Morgan?" Lisa hurried over to Carter's station and put on a spare headset. After a few moments of listening, she began typing rapidly on her translation computer. "It's definitely Zalani. They're asking for help. They say their ship is dying and they have wounded aboard." Jake didn't hesitate. "Walsh, take us to those survivors. Brooks, keep us hidden in the debris field as much as possible." Chief Petty Officer Tony Walsh's hands moved over the navigation controls. "Aye, sir," using minimal thrusters to avoid detection, as the UHS Liberty moved carefully through the wreckage. Jake got his first real look at what remained of the Zalani space installations. The pieces floating around them weren't just metal and machinery. They were works of art. Even broken and burned, Jake could see that everything the Zalani built was beautiful. Curved lines and smooth surfaces that looked like they had been grown rather than constructed. "Sir, we're close enough for a visual on the survivor ship," Foster announced. The main screen changed to show a small vessel that looked like it was made of crystal and silver. Part of it was cracked open like a broken egg, and Jake could see figures moving slowly inside what should have been empty space. "They're in vacuum," Dr. Benjamin Hayes said from his medical station. "How are they? Still alive?" Lisa was working frantically with her translation equipment. "I'm getting more signals now, sir. Not just from this ship. There are survivors scattered all through this debris field. Dozens of ships. All ships. This is Liberty," Jake announced over the fleet communications channel. "Begin search and rescue. Operations immediately. Save everyone you can find." The next 2 hours were a blur of activity. The human ships moved carefully through the wreckage, using their tractor beams to pull in damaged Zalani vessels. Each rescue revealed something new and strange about the people they had come to help. The first Zalani survivor they brought aboard was unlike anything any human had ever imagined. It was tall, nearly 8 feet, but so thin it seemed like it might break if someone breathed on it wrong. Its skin looked like it was made of living crystal that glowed with a soft blue light. Instead of hair, it had what looked like tiny fiber, optic cables that sparkled and changed color. Dr. Hayes was in the medical bay trying to figure out how to help the injured alien when Jake arrived. "How is he? Or she? How do we even tell?" "I don't know, sir. I don't even know how they breathe. They don't seem to have lungs like we do. And look at this." Hayes pointed to a scanner reading. "Their body temperature is much lower than ours. What's normal for us might kill them." The Zalani on the medical table was conscious and watching them with large eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. When it saw Jake, it made a sound like wind chimes mixed with music. "Dr. Morgan to medical bay," came Lisa's voice over the intercom. "I think I can translate now." Lisa arrived a few minutes later with her portable translation device. She set it up near the injured Zalani and spoke into it slowly. "We are humans. We heard your message. We came to help." The device made a series of chiming sounds. The Zalani's eyes grew even wider and it began to make rapid musical sounds back. "It says..." "Wait, this is incredible," Lisa said, listening to the translation. "It says its name is Kefna. It's thanking us for coming, but it doesn't understand how we're here. It says its people sent the message hoping beyond hope, but they never really believed anyone would answer." Jake leaned closer to the translation device. "Tell Kefna that humans don't abandon people who call for help. Ask what happened here." The conversation that followed painted a terrible picture. The Korthak Empire had arrived in the Zalana system 6 months ago with a massive fleet. They had demanded complete surrender and the enslavement of all Zalani people. When the Zalani tried to offer them resources or knowledge instead of their freedom, the Korthak had begun destroying everything. "They don't understand negotiation," Lisa translated as Kefna continued its story. The Korthak believe that strength is the only thing that matters. They've been bombarding the planet and destroying our orbital cities to force us to surrender. What about your military? Jake asked. Your defenses? There was a long pause before Lisa translated the answer. Sir, they don't have any. The Zilani have never fought a war. They don't even have a concept of military force. They're scientists, artists, philosophers. They've never needed to fight anyone. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. An entire civilization of peaceful beings facing an empire of warriors with no way to defend themselves. Ask Kefna about the Korthak fleet. What kind of weapons do they have? What are their ships like? As Lisa translated, Kefna's crystalline features seemed to dim with sadness. The answer came back in musical tones that sounded like a funeral song. The Korthak ships are built for war. They have weapons that can burn entire cities from space. Their ships are covered in armor thicker than our strongest buildings, and there are so many of them. Kefna says they've never seen so many ships in one place. How many Zilani are left? On the planet? Maybe 2 million. There were 8 million before the Korthak arrived. The number hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. 6 million people killed in 6 months by an empire that simply wanted to prove its strength. Sir, came Danny Brooks's voice over the intercom. You need to get to the bridge. We're getting a transmission from the planet's surface. Jake left Dr. Hayes to continue treating Kefna and hurried to the bridge. On the main screen was another Zilani, but this one was different. Older, with crystal skin that had turned almost white and fiber optic hair that barely glowed at all. This is Council Leader Zefka, Lisa translated as the alien spoke. It's speaking for all the surviving Zilani on the planet. It says they detected our ships and, sir, it's asking if we're really the Deathworlders from the stories. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his answer. Through the viewport, he could see the massive Korthak fleet still in perfect formation around the planet. Their weapons still pointed downward at the cities below. Tell Zefka that we are humans from Earth. We received their message and we came as fast as we could, tell them. Jake paused, thinking about what it meant to be called a Deathworlder. Tell them that no one fights alone while humans are in the galaxy. As Lisa translated his words, Jake saw something he hadn't expected. On the screen, the ancient council leader's crystal features seemed to brighten, and for the first time since they'd arrived in the system, Jake heard something that sounded like hope in an alien voice. But as he looked at the tactical display showing 200 enemy warships against his 6 patrol vessels, Jake wondered if hope would be enough. Commander Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the UHS Liberty, staring at the communications display. He had made a decision that would either save the Zilani people or get his entire crew killed. Maybe both. Carter, open a channel to the Korthak. Fleet Commander, Jake ordered. Ryan Carter looked up from his station with wide eyes. Sir, are you sure about this? We can't fight 200 ships without knowing what we're dealing with. Sometimes the best weapon is information. Jake straightened his uniform and walked to the center of the bridge. Open the channel. The main screen flickered, and then showed something that made several crew members step backward. The Korthak. Commander was massive, even sitting down. Its skin looked like dark metal armor that had grown instead of being made. Yellow eyes glowed from a face that was part reptile, part machine. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal. Dr. Lisa Morgan's translation device worked quickly. I am War Master Thrakmor of the Korthak Empire. You pilot small ships in our territory. Identify yourself before we destroy you. Jake took a deep breath. I am Commander Jake Harrison of the human fleet Iron Wolves. We received a distress call from the Zilani people and came to offer assistance. There was a pause as the translation went through. Then Thrakmor leaned forward, and Jake could see rows of sharp teeth when it opened its mouth. Humans, the War Master said, and something changed in its voice. Show me your face clearly. Jake stepped closer to the camera. On the screen, he could see Thrakmor studying him with those burning yellow eyes. Behind the War Master, other Korthak figures moved in the shadows, and Jake could hear them making sounds that might have been conversation. You claim to be human, Thrackmore said finally. The Deathworlders from the stories. We are human, yes, from the planet Earth. What happened next surprised everyone on the Liberty's bridge. Thrackmore stood up, revealing its full height of nearly 10 feet, and made a gesture that might have been a salute. The legends speak of your kind, the War Master said. Warriors from a world so deadly that survival made you the greatest fighters in the galaxy. We have heard the stories told in 1,000 different systems. Lieutenant Amanda Foster leaned over to Jake and whispered, "Sir, they know about us." How is that possible? Jake held up a hand for silence, keeping his eyes on the screen. What stories? Thrackmore's massive form shifted, and for a moment it almost looked like the alien was considering something. Stories of humans who fought against impossible odds and won. Stories of a species that refused to surrender even when facing certain death. Stories of warriors who bonded with other species and made them stronger. The traders tell these stories in the outer systems, Thrackmore continued. They speak of humans who turned their own disasters into weapons, of soldiers who fought on when their bodies were broken, of leaders who would rather die than abandon their people. On the bridge, Jake's crew exchanged glances. None of them had realized that stories about humanity had spread through alien civilizations. They say your world tried to kill you every day, Thrackmore said, and instead of making you weak, it made you unstoppable. Jake thought about Earth, about hurricanes and earthquakes and volcanoes, about the ice ages that nearly wiped out early humans, about the diseases and predators and disasters that had shaped human evolution for millions of years. Earth is a challenging world, Jake admitted, but it taught us to work together, to never give up, to protect those who can't protect themselves. Yes, Thrackmore said, and there was something like respect in the alien's voice. This is what the stories say. But the stories also say that humans are few in number and far from this part of space. Jake could see where this was going. We are here now. 6 small ships, Thrackmore observed, against the might of the Korthak Empire. Even Deathworlders must know when they are beaten. We know when we're outnumbered, Jake replied, but we also know that numbers aren't everything. Lieutenant Danny Brooks had been working quietly at his tactical station during the conversation. Now he looked up and nodded to Jake. It was time for the next part of their plan. Carter, begin. Broadcasting on all frequencies, Jake ordered. Yes, sir, broadcasting now. On screens throughout the Korthak fleet, images began to appear. Brooks had spent the last few hours preparing a presentation that would show the Korthak exactly what kind of species they were dealing with. The first images were of Earth itself. Massive storms that could destroy entire cities. Tornadoes that could lift houses into the sky. Volcanoes that could block out the sun for months. Earthquakes that could split the ground open for miles. This is our home, Jake said as the images played. This is where humans evolved. The next images showed human history. Ancient humans hunting animals 10 times their size. Soldiers fighting in conditions that would kill most species. Explorers crossing frozen wastelands and burning deserts. Scientists working in environments so toxic that they had to wear protective suits. We learned to survive by working together, Jake continued, by never giving up, by turning every challenge into an opportunity to become stronger. The final images were more recent. Human cities built in places no other species would consider, habitable, underwater bases on the ocean floor, research stations in the Arctic, space colonies on worlds with no atmosphere. We don't conquer other species, Jake said. We help them become stronger than they ever thought possible. On the screen, War Master Thrackmore was studying the images with intense interest. Behind him, Jake could see other Korthak officers doing the same thing. Impressive, Thrackmore admitted. But the Zalani are weak. They have no warrior spirit. They deserve to be conquered. The Zalani have something better than warrior spirit, Jake replied. They have the courage to reach out for help when they need it. And they have allies willing to answer that call. Dr. Morgan stepped forward. Commander, I'm getting reports from the other ships. The Zalani survivors we rescued are working with our science teams. They're sharing their technology. Jake smiled. This was exactly what he had hoped for. War Master, The Zilani may not be warriors, but they are scientists and engineers beyond anything we've ever seen. Their technology, combined with human tactics and determination, creates something new, something stronger than either species could be alone. To demonstrate, Brooks activated one of the modifications that the Zilani survivors had helped them install. The Liberty's shield suddenly blazed with new energy, far brighter than any human ship had ever achieved. The Zilani don't need to be warriors, Jake continued. They need to be what they are: brilliant, creative, and willing to work with others for the good of all. On the screen, Thrackmore was very still. Jake could see the alien thinking, processing what it had seen and heard. You would fight the entire Korthik Empire for people you have never met before today, Thrackmore said finally. Yes. Even though you are outnumbered 30-1. Yes. Even though victory seems impossible. Especially then. There was a long silence. Then Thrackmore leaned back in its command chair and made a sound that might have been laughter. The stories are true, the War Master said. You really are Deathworlders. Very well, humans. You want to fight for the Zilani? Then fight. But know that when you lose, when your ships are burning and your crews are dying, you chose this path. We know, Jake replied, and we'll choose it again. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Liberty in tense silence. Sir, Carter said quietly, the other ships in our fleet are reporting ready for combat operations. The Zilani modifications are installed and functioning. Jake looked around at his crew. They were scared but determined. They knew the odds, but they also knew what they had to do. Then let's show the galaxy what Deathworlders really means, Jake said. All ships prepare for battle. The battle began exactly 1 hour after the transmission ended. Commander Jake Harrison watched from the bridge of the UHS Liberty as the massive Korthak fleet began to move. 200 warships against 6 human patrol vessels. The odds were impossible, but Jake had learned something important about being human. Impossible just meant you had to be more creative. All ships, execute Plan Alpha, Jake commanded into his communications headset. Remember, we're not trying to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to hurt them enough to make them reconsider. The human ships scattered in 6 different directions, each one heading toward a different part of the Korthak formation. To the aliens, it probably looked like panic, but Jake knew his people better than that. Lieutenant Danny Brooks was hunched over his tactical display, coordinating the attack. Liberty to Wolverine, you have 15 Korthak fighters closing on your position. Copy that, Liberty, came the reply from Captain Susan Park aboard the UHS Wolverine. We see them, beginning evasive maneuvers. The first part of the human strategy became clear as the 6 ships began to move through the Korthak fleet, like dancers in a deadly ballet. The human vessels were much smaller and faster than the massive Korthak warships. What the aliens had. Built for power, humans had built for speed and agility. Lieutenant Mike Thompson led a squadron of human fighters from the UHS Ranger. His voice crackled over the communications as he dove his small craft between 2 enormous Korthak dreadnoughts. This is Thunder Squadron. We're in the thick of it now. These big ships can barely turn fast enough to track us. Jake watched on, the tactical display as Thompson's fighters wove between the Korthak vessels like mosquitoes around sleeping giants. The alien ships were trying to bring their massive weapons to bear, but they had been designed to fight other large warships, not tiny, fast-moving targets. Brooks, status report, Jake called. Phase 1 is working, sir. We're causing confusion in their formations. Several of their ships have had to stop firing at the planet to deal with us. That had been the first goal. Every moment the Korthak spent fighting humans was a moment they weren't bombarding Zilani cities. Beginning Phase 2, Jake announced. Carter, patch me through to Chief Walsh. Tony Walsh's voice came through the communications system from the engine room. Engineering here, sir. How are those Zilani modifications holding up? Better than I hoped, sir. Their energy systems are incredible. We're running at 150% normal power levels, and everything is stable. The Zilani survivors they had rescued were proving invaluable. Working side by side with human engineers, they had managed to integrate Zilani energy technology with human weapons and shields. The result was something neither species could have achieved alone. Liberty to all ships. Beginning attack pattern. Beta, Jake ordered. The human vessels suddenly changed direction, converging on a single point in the Korthak formation. The UHS Liberty led the charge, its shields blazing with Zilani-enhanced energy as it headed straight for one of the largest Korthak dreadnoughts. "Sir, they're concentrating fire on us," Lieutenant Amanda Foster reported from her intelligence station. "Multiple ships are targeting the Liberty." "Hold course," Jake replied calmly. "Brooks, are we in range?" "Almost, sir. 5 more seconds." Jake could see the massive Korthak ship growing larger on the main screen. Its hull was covered in weapons, all of them now firing at the approaching human vessel. The Liberty's shields flared and sparked under the intense bombardment. "Now!" Jake shouted. The Liberty's main guns fired, but not at the Korthak ship's hull. Instead, they targeted something much more important: the ship's engine exhausts. The concentrated energy beams, enhanced by Zilani technology, sliced through the alien vessel's propulsion systems like a hot knife through butter. The massive Korthak dreadnought shuddered and began to drift helplessly as its engines died. Without power to its engines, the ship was still dangerous but could no longer maneuver. "Direct hit," Brooks announced. "Target is dead in space." But the real surprise came next. Instead of moving away to safety, the Liberty moved closer to the disabled Korthak ship. Major Kelly Adams and her Marine boarding team were ready for action. "Adams here," the Major's voice came over the communications. "Boarding pods are away." Jake watched on the tactical display as small human pods shot across the gap between the ships and attached themselves to the Korthak vessel's hull. Moments later, Adams and her Marines were cutting their way inside. This was something the Korthak had never seen before. In their experience, space battles were fought at long range with massive weapons. The idea of actually boarding an enemy ship during combat was completely foreign to them. "We're inside," Adams reported. "These corridors are huge, built for beings much larger than us. That's actually working in our favor. We can move through their ship faster than they can respond." The human Marines moved through the Korthak vessel like a pack of wolves. They worked in small teams, using their smaller size and human agility to outmaneuver the larger aliens. Every few minutes, another Korthak system would shut down as the Marines reached a critical control room. Adams to Liberty. "We've secured their main computer core. Beginning data download now." "Excellent work, Major. What's the situation aboard their ship?" "Confusing, sir. These Korthak are tough fighters individually, but they don't work together well. It's like each one is trying to be the hero instead of coordinating as a team." Jake smiled grimly. That was exactly what he had hoped to discover. The Korthak were warriors, but they weren't soldiers. They didn't understand the kind of teamwork that made human military forces so effective. Meanwhile, the other human ships were executing similar attacks throughout the Korthak fleet. The UHS Wolverine had used an asteroid field to hide while it targeted another dreadnought's communications array. The UHS Ranger was leading Korthak fighters on a chase through the debris of destroyed Zilani space stations, using the wreckage to confuse enemy sensors. Dr. Lisa Morgan's voice came over the communications from the science station. "Commander, I'm getting signals from the planet's surface. The Zilani are asking what's happening up here." "Tell them the cavalry has arrived," Jake replied, "and ask them if they can help us with something. We need detailed information about Korthak ship designs." "Already working on it, sir. The Zilani have been studying the enemy fleet for months. They're sending us complete technical specifications now." The information the Zilani provided changed everything. Human tactics combined with Zilani intelligence about enemy ships created opportunities that neither species could have seen alone. "Brooks, look at this data," Jake called. "The Korthak ships have a critical weakness in their shield generators. If we can hit them in exactly the right spot." "I see it, sir. Forwarding targeting information to all ships now." The tide of battle began to turn as human precision met Zilani knowledge. One by one, Korthak ships found their shields failing, as human weapons found weak points that should have been impossible to hit. But the most important change came from an unexpected source. Several Korthak ships had stopped firing altogether, and their crews were asking to surrender. "Sir," Foster reported with amazement, "we're getting surrender requests from 17 Korthak vessels." "What? Why?" "According to our translation software, they're saying they want to serve alongside humans. They claim we fight with honor and they want to learn from us." Jake stared at the tactical display. In 2 hours of fighting, the humans had disabled over 40 Korthak ships, captured critical intelligence, and somehow convinced a portion of the enemy fleet to switch sides. "Sir," Carter announced, "incoming transmission from War Master Thrackmore." The main screen showed the Korthak commander again, but this time he looked different. Less aggressive, more thoughtful. "Human commander," Thrackmore said through the translator, "your people fight like nothing we have ever seen. You coordinate like a single organism, but each warrior thinks independently. You protect each other and work together for goals beyond personal glory." "That's what humans do," Jake replied simply. "We came here to conquer the weak," Thrackmore continued. "But you have shown us something new. Strength that comes not from domination, but from cooperation. Warriors who fight not for conquest, but to protect others." Jake waited, sensing that the War Master had more to say. "The Korthak Empire has fought many wars," Thrackmore said finally. "But we have never fought anything like you. You are truly the Deathworlders from the legends." "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now, human, we learn what it means to be more than conquerors." 3 months after the battle for Zalana Prime, Commander Jake Harrison stood in what had once been the command center of a Korthak dreadnought. Now it served as the headquarters for something completely new in the galaxy, the Terran-Zalani Cooperative Defense Alliance. The room itself showed how much had changed. Zalani crystal technology glowed softly alongside human computer screens. Former Korthak officers worked side by side with human tactical specialists and Zalani scientists. The air hummed with translation devices as 3 very different species learned to work together. "Sir, we're receiving another request for alliance," reported Lieutenant Amanda Foster from her new position as Director of Interspecies Relations. "This time it's from the Vex Collective. They say the Hadron Empire is threatening their home systems and they need help." Jake nodded, unsurprised. Word of what happened at Zalana Prime had spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. The story of humans defeating a massive empire to save a peaceful species had captured the imagination of dozens of civilizations. "What do we know about the Vex Collective?" Jake asked. Dr. Lisa Morgan, now serving as Chief Cultural Advisor, pulled up information on her display. "They're a machine intelligence species, very logical, very precise. They've never been aggressive, but they're excellent at building defensive systems. The Hadron Empire apparently wants to steal their technology." "And the Hadron Empire?" "Similar to the Korthak, but worse. They don't just conquer other species. They completely wipe out entire civilizations and take over their worlds." Jake walked to the large viewport that showed Zalana Prime below. The planet looked much different now than it had 3 months ago. The smoke was gone, replaced by new cities that combined Zalani artistic beauty with human defensive practicality. Ships from a dozen different species moved between orbital stations that had been rebuilt stronger than before. "Foster, send a message to the Vex Collective. Tell them we'll consider their request, but first they need to understand what joining our alliance means." The alliance had grown beyond anything Jake had originally imagined. It started with just humans and Zalani, but former Korthak warriors had insisted on joining after seeing how humans fought. Then came the Trill, a species of traders who had been attacked by pirates. After them, the Zenith Federation, whose exploration ships had been captured by slavers. Each new member brought something unique to the alliance. The Zalani provided incredible scientific knowledge. The reformed Korthak brought military experience and knowledge of warrior cultures. The Trill had connections throughout the galaxy's trading networks. The Zenith had the best exploration and mapping technology anyone had ever seen. "Jake," came a musical voice from behind him. He turned to see Kefna, the first Zalani survivor they had rescued. The alien's crystal skin glowed brighter now, a sign of health and happiness that Dr. Morgan had taught the humans to recognize. "Kefna, how are the new defense installations coming along?" Beyond our wildest hopes, the Zilani replied through its translation device. Human tactical thinking combined with our energy technology has created defensive systems that are both beautiful and incredibly effective. More importantly, we're learning to think about protection in ways we never could before. That was perhaps the most important change. The Zilani weren't becoming warriors in the traditional sense, but they were learning to defend themselves and others. They had taken human concepts like strategic thinking and early warning systems and made them uniquely their own. "Sir," called Ryan Carter from his communication station, "we're getting a priority message from Earth." Jake had been expecting this. Earth's government had been trying to figure out what to do about their deep space patrol fleet that had accidentally started an interstellar alliance. The last message from home had been full of questions about authority, jurisdiction, and proper procedures. "Put it through, Carter." The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Admiral Patricia Wells, Jake's former commanding officer. She looked tired but was smiling. "Jake, I'm not sure whether to promote you or court-martial you," she said without preamble. "What you've done out there has turned everything we thought we knew about galactic politics upside down. Ma'am, we just responded to a distress call. And in doing so, you've made humanity the center of the largest peaceful alliance in known galactic history. Do you have any idea how many species are asking to open diplomatic relations with Earth?" Jake could imagine. Every week brought new messages from civilizations that had heard about the alliance and wanted to join, or at least establish trade relations. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Wells smiled. "Your orders are to keep doing exactly what you've been doing. Earth's government has officially recognized the Terran-Zilani Cooperative Defense Alliance. You're being promoted to Admiral and given full authority to negotiate on behalf of humanity." Jake felt a weight settle on his shoulders. Leading 6 ships was one thing. Speaking for all of humanity was something else entirely. "There's more," Wells continued. "We're sending reinforcements, not just ships, but diplomats, scientists, engineers, teachers. If humanity is going to be part of a galactic community, we're going to do it right." After the transmission ended, Jake found himself back at the viewport looking down at Zilana Prime. The planet below was busy with activity as different species worked together on projects that none of them could have accomplished alone. Major Kelly Adams joined him at the viewport. She had been promoted to colonel and now commanded a mixed unit of human marines, reformed Korthak warriors, and volunteers from other allied species. "Penny for your thoughts, Admiral," she said with a grin. "Just thinking about how we got here. 3 months ago, we were a simple patrol fleet. Now we're responsible for keeping peace in this entire sector of space. Are you having second thoughts?" Jake considered the question. The alliance was growing faster than anyone had expected. Every success brought new challenges and new responsibilities, but it also brought something else. "No," he said finally. "Look down there." Adams followed his gaze to the planet below. In one of the rebuilt cities, they could see a mixed group of beings working together on what looked like a massive art project. Zilani crystalline forms worked alongside bulky Korthak figures and small human shapes to create something beautiful. 3 months ago, the Korthak were trying to destroy the Zilani. Now they're building sculptures together. That's not something I ever want to have second thoughts about. Dr. Benjamin Hayes joined them at the viewport. As chief medical officer for the Alliance, he had been working with doctors from different species to establish medical protocols that could help everyone. "Admiral, you should see the latest reports from the medical exchanges," he said, holding up his tablet. "Zilani healing crystals combined with human surgical techniques. Korthak regeneration therapy adapted for other species. We're developing medical treatments that no single species could have created alone. That was the real success of the Alliance. It wasn't just about military defense or political cooperation. It was about what different species could accomplish together when they shared knowledge and worked toward common goals." Lieutenant Mike Thompson, now Captain Thompson, and commander of the Alliance's fighter wings, approached the group. "Admiral, we've got incoming ships. Long-range sensors show a fleet approaching from the Andromeda vector." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "Hostile?" "Unknown, sir, but they're broadcasting the standard Alliance identification codes. Looks like we might have more friends coming to visit." Jake smiled. The alliance was growing, bringing together species that had never imagined working with others. It wasn't always easy. Different cultures, different ways of thinking, different approaches to everything from military tactics to art. But somehow they were making it work. Foster, prepare a welcome committee. If we're going to be the galaxy's meeting place for peaceful species, we might as well do it right. As Jake watched the approaching ships on the tactical display, he thought about the distress signal that had started everything. A desperate message from a dying world, calling for help from legends they weren't even sure existed. The Zilani had called humans Deathworlders, and Jake was beginning to understand what that really meant. Not that humans were the deadliest species in the galaxy, but that they were the species that refused to let others die alone. They were the ones who heard a cry for help and answered, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. Now, as more and more species joined their alliance, Jake realized that the real strength of Deathworlders wasn't in their ability to survive. It was in their ability to help others not just survive, but thrive. The galaxy was a big, dangerous place, but nobody had to face it alone anymore.